Hey guys, Miss Davidson here. Hope you're having a great day. So, the learning objective for today's lesson is to be able to write strong explanatory short responses. This is the 2-point rubric that I use to score your short responses. To get a perfect score, 2 out of 2, your response needs to give an accurate claim that answers the question and is fully supported. So, the response should also provide at least 2 examples of relevant evidence or quotations from the text, and it should thoroughly explain how the evidence supports that claim or answer that you have provided to the question. A 1 out of 2, so partial credit, gives an accurate claim still, but the support is most likely limited. So it will provide evidence, but the quantity or quality may need improvement, and the explanation may also need further development, or the explanation may be missing. The 0 out of 2, so the response that gives you basically no credit, is the response that lacks a claim or answer to the question, or has a claim that is not an accurate answer. The 0 may also make a valid claim, but provide absolutely no evidence or quotations or inaccurate evidence that really doesn't support the claim in any way. So let's look at some examples, and I'm curious as to what score you think this response would receive. So the question is the question that you guys actually answered last week. It is how, or one of them, how was the conflict in Amigo Brothers resolved? Support your claim with at least 2 pieces of textual evidence. This student wrote simply, they fought. What score would you give this response on our 2-point rubric? Think about it. It unfortunately would be the 0, right? Because it has no evidence and there's no explanation. Even though the claim is fairly accurate, there is absolutely no evidence. Okay, let's look at another. What score would you give this response? This question is, what type of conflict is present in Amigo Brothers? It says, I think the type of conflict in Amigo Brothers is character versus self. Although it is partially character versus character, I don't really think that the boys ever felt like they were against each other. The boys knew that no matter who won, one of them would be disappointed, but they would be happy for each other no matter what. I think they were conflicted with themselves. On page 6, Antonio thought, like his friend in the South Bronx, he prayed for victory via a quick, clean knockout in the first round. This shows us that Antonio wanted to win, but he dreaded the thought of fighting his best friend. He was afraid that a long match would risk their friendship. On page 3, Felix tells Antonio, in fact, since we found out it was going to be me and you, I've been awake at night, pulling punches on you, trying not to hurt you. This tells us that Felix, too, wants to win, but is afraid that the fight will ruin their friendship. Both boys want to win, but are conflicted as they think about whether friendship or success are more important to them. What score would you give this response out of 2? Think about whether it has 2 examples from the text and whether it explains the examples thoroughly. I would say that yes, it gets a 2 out of 2 because it explains the 2 pieces of evidence very thoroughly and how they support the claim. And finally, we have a sort of average response. What score would you give this one? It's answering the same question, what type of conflict is present in Amigo Brothers? This person wrote, it's character versus character because Felix and Antonio had to fight each other, and neither of them wanted to know who won. They also said, yeah, we both know that in the ring, the better man wins. Friend or no friend, brother or no. So what score would you give this response out of 2? For me, this one would be a 1 out of 2 because it provides some evidence, but the quantity is lacking, right? It's only 1 example. Plus, there's not much explanation in this response. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a formula that will help you write the 2 out of 2 short response every single time. It's called RACES, but I'm going to ask you to do the C and the E part of this procedure 2 times in your short responses. So you can imagine it would almost be RACECES. So RACES stands for restate the question and answer the question. These are the 2 things that you do in your claim. Then you cite, with a C, 2 examples of text evidence, and you explain or elaborate upon both of those examples. So 1 sentence of explanation per citation. And then you try to sum it up at the end of the response. So restating and answering the question means using language from the question and also giving your opinion or answer to the question. So in the example of what type of conflict is present in Amigo Brothers, support your claim with at least 2 pieces of textual evidence, you would use some of this language. You'd say, the conflict present in Amigo Brothers. So notice this is the same words as what's here in the question. This is how we are restating the question, right? Using some of that language to make sure we're answering it directly. Now the second part, when we say is blank, is our answer. Okay, so the conflict present in Amigo Brothers is character versus self. It's really sophisticated if you can also say why, right? Because the characters are having internal struggles about fighting one another. So this whole section here is our answer to the question, and the first part here is us restating the question to make sure we're answering it directly. Okay, then you're going to cite 2 pieces of evidence, and ideally this is a direct quote in quotation marks from the text to support your answer. So I like to use sentence starters like, this is apparent when, right? The fact that it is a character versus self conflict is apparent or obvious or evident when, and then you put the quote of the character. Felix says, or thinks to himself, boy, this is going to be hard to fight Antonio, right? And you put a direct quote here. You could also use a sentence starter like the narrator describes, or in the opening scene, and then you put the quote from the text. Now, you will want to cite 2 pieces of evidence, so you'll probably need 2 of these introductory phrases in front of your quotes. Then the E of races is explain or elaborate. Answer the question, how does this evidence prove your claim or answer is correct? So you say something like, this scene where Felix is really dreading the idea of fighting Antonio demonstrates that he is having a character versus self conflict because he is sort of anguished, right? Mentally and emotionally, period. You could also use sentence starters like, this moment reveals, this description proves that blank because. So you'll have some sentence starters in this slides presentation, which I will put on Google Classroom. Finally, the S in races is sum it up or make a closing statement. And you want to try not to repeat exactly what you've already said when you sum it up, right? So you could say something like, it is now apparent that the characters are having internal struggles, instead of the conflict is a character versus self conflict. And so it's phrased differently than that opening answer. All right, so I could write in real time for you guys a whole races example, but I feel like I don't have to because one of your peers did a really nice job with this response. I'm going to use my claim, but I think I can put this here as my example of a strong response. So it begins, the conflict present in Amigo Brothers is character versus self because the characters are having internal struggles about fighting one another. This student and I will work on eliminating phrases like I don't think, because we don't really need to say I in our academic writing. But for the most part, this response already does the answering of the question, the citing, the explaining, and then citing and explaining again, right? We have the 2 quotes, the first one from page 6 and the second one from page 3. And then we also have this sum it up sentence. Both boys want to win but are conflicted as they think about whether friendship or success are more important to them. And this is a really beautiful sum it up phrase or sentence because it is distinct from the claim. All right, so before you continue with today's work, I would like for you to use these Quizlets to review plot and conflict because you'll need to know these terms for a quiz that's coming up as well as for today's work. You can use the flashcard version. You can use the kind of quiz to test yourself. The beginning of the story, establishment of setting and characters, that's exposition. And there's a separate one for conflict. So you click on the links in this slides presentation. So this goes through the different types of conflict as well as the definition of conflict itself. Once you've played around with those, I would like for you to read your independent reading book for 20 to 30 minutes. And as you read your book, I would like for you to try to put post-its on pages with quotes that will help you answer one of the following questions. So you can pick to answer one of these 3 questions and take a look at them now and maybe make your decision before you start reading so that you know what kind of evidence you're going to need in your short response you'll write at the end of today's class. So the 3 options of questions are, what is the main conflict of your independent reading book? Support your answer with at least 2 pieces of textual evidence. What is a personality trait of a character in your independent reading book? Support your claim with at least 2 pieces of textual evidence. And finally, how does a rising action event of your independent reading book build tension? This, for me, would probably be our challenge question. Support your claim with at least 2 pieces of textual evidence. And what I mean by tension here is like conflict, right? Or suspense or something like that. So you will answer this prompt in this short response reflection document on Google Classroom. This is where you will answer or write your short response. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions about today's work. Good luck and have a great day. Thanks.